Welcome back to Insider. Yes, the time has finally come. I have played some video games that I don't intend on making videos for on the main channel. It's been quite a while since I've had the chance to do that. This year has just been a lot of big games that are part of my repertoire of franchises and genres that I talk about on TGBS. A lot of games have come out that I've played and then gone, well shit, time to make a video on it. So I haven't been playing much in my free time up until now. First it was No More Heroes, made a video on that, then it was Kingdom Hearts 3, then it was Devil May Cry 5, and that's kind of taken out the bulk of the year for me. Just making videos about those games. And long videos too, not like little videos that I just get to like make in a week or two. Though I did make that No More Heroes one pretty quickly. I think I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that one. So if everything I've been playing has just been given a main video on the main channel, it leaves me with little to come and discuss here. But I've finally taken a bit of a break, been exploring a little more outside of the usual genres I cover, not too much. And I have a few things I guess I could recommend and discuss today, so let's dive into it. I'm going to be using trailer footage for the first two games I'll be discussing, partially because it saves me going back in and recording, but also because they're very narrative focused and kind of be spoilers to show you much more than what the promotional material offered. So the first game I want to discuss is Return of the Obra Dinn, which is Lucas Pope's latest game. He's known mostly for creating Papers, Please, which, geez, it's been a while now since Papers, Please. I think it was 2013 or something. Anyway, Obra Dinn, really cool puzzle game. I guess it's a puzzle game. It's sort of like a detective sort of game. You play as a man who works for an insurance firm, and you arrive on a ship in the, I think it's the early 1800s, that disappeared, and 60 people died on it, and you have to go around and fill out forms, basically, on how they died, and what happened to them. And it's extremely compelling. It's really, really good. It's really quite sick, the way you solve things. You have this special stopwatch that lets you see the last moments before somebody died, and you have to find their corpse to access this memory. And you also get to see a bit of dialogue, the last things they heard before they died, and from that you have to piece together who is who and how they died. So it's pretty easy to figure out how somebody died because you get to see it happen, but then you have to figure out who died. You have a list of all the people who were on the ship and their nationality and their profession on the ship. You even have pictures of all their faces, but you don't know who's who. You don't know which name correlates to each person. So essentially, you have to go into different memories and piece it together yourself. So let's say you find someone who was shot. Who was he shot by? You now know that that guy was shot, but who is that guy? And who shot him? Well, maybe you'll find out later who shot him, and maybe later you'll find out somewhere who he shot. The game introduces this concept with a really good like opening sort of semi-tutorial. It's a really good tutorial because it isn't really a tutorial. It just shows you an example of the kind of thing you'll be having to solve and then just lets you loose on this ship. At the start of the game, you see someone getting shot and they say, "Oh no, Captain, don't shoot me." So you know, oh, the captain shot him, but who is the guy that was shot? Well, later you find out that it was the captain's wife's brother from something the captain says later in his flashback to the captain's death. So then you go, oh, the surname of the captain's wife has a name in common with somebody else on the ship. So you go, oh, that must have been the guy who was shot. And basically this all dovetails off into all 60 deaths around the ship. So you're going to some flashbacks, seeing who got killed, trying to figure out who it was that got killed, and other flashbacks. You know, sometimes people disappear as well. You don't see their deaths, and you have to figure that out. You write this in your little book, and you can't just go through and guess because the game will only recognize that you've gotten a death right if you get 3 people's death right. So every time you get 3 right, the game will go, oh yeah, you got those right. So you can't just go through and guess them all. You have to get 3 right at the same time. So obviously that rule isn't contextualized in the game. You just have to sort of go with it. But whatever the case, it creates a really compelling puzzle game where you're piecing together how all these people died on this ship and discovering little surprises as you work back, because you get all these flashbacks out of order. You're piecing them together as you play. I've really played nothing like it, and it's And it's a game which, you know, not much replay value. Once you've beaten the game and figured things out, you can't really go back and do it again. So it was a great experience, and an experience I'm probably gonna have only once, which is why, if you haven't played it, you should definitely play it without spoilers and just give it a shot. I managed to beat it without looking anything up online, which, as someone who doesn't play a lot of puzzle games, I was really proud of managing to do. I don't know how hard people consider Obra Dinn to be, so maybe that's not that impressive, but in terms of the genre, like for puzzle games, it might be easier than most, but yeah, I played through it in like 2 sittings, I think. It took me 8 hours for me to get through it all. I think it's definitely worth the price of admission. It also goes without saying that the visual style is also very cool and unique, and definitely lends the game its own sort of spark. I think what I like the most about Lucas Pope's games is that he's very good at creating compelling situations out of individuals whose professions you wouldn't think would lend themselves to such compelling gameplay. Papers, Please, really compelling game where you play a border patrol agent, you know, just checking people's documents when they're trying to get into a country. But it becomes this really compelling game where more and more rules are added as you as the days go on, and restrictions on entering the country become tighter, and you've got to kind of morally choose at times whether to let in someone who maybe doesn't have the right documentation. And if you don't do the job well enough, your family might die. And a lot of people have talked about Papers, Please, and a lot of people have already talked about Obra Dinn. It's kind of why I don't plan on covering it personally. Even what I've just said a minute ago, I think a million people have already said. You know, I think there's a lot of videos out there of people being like, this is Obra Dinn, and this is the premise, and isn't it cool? And yeah, it is. If you're looking for content to watch on the game after you've beaten it, then Game Maker's Toolkit did a great video on the game's design, and so did Matthew Matosis. He put out a really good one recently too, but again, I'd recommend beating the game before doing that. One of my favorite things about Lucas Pope's games is how compelling he manages to make documents and pieces of paper. I know this is a very odd thing to praise, but his games are super comfy. I've only played Papers, Please and Obra Dinn, but it's crazy how much fun he makes bureaucracy. He makes the act of completing forms weirdly compelling, and I can't quite put my finger on it now off the cuff how he does it, but it's really satisfying in his games to pour through documents and try and piece all these things together that are given to you and contextualized really nicely in the universe by the way they're written. The crunch of the papers, the information, the little tidbits, the writing, the way it's written gives you about the world at large. I need to play some of his older games. He made a few lesser-known games before Papers, Please, and I should really dig into those, because what I've played of his Big Two, the Big Two games that everyone knows about that he's made, really good stuff. I need to experience his whole repertoire. So yeah, definitely recommend Obra Dinn. The second game I want to talk about is another game that just so happens to be about reliving the last moments somebody died, and that would be What Remains of Edith Finch. This came out a couple of years ago, but it just became free on PlayStation Plus. For some reason, I have a PlayStation Plus subscription at the moment, so I got to play this one for free, and I quite enjoyed it. I just kind of played through it one night on a whim, and I had a pretty good time. I can't say I didn't enjoy. You know, I can't say I'd take back the time I spent on it. This is a far more traditional walking sim, quote-unquote, sort of game, as opposed to Obra Dinn, which is, you know, very gameplay-focused, even though it just involves walking around a ship and picking options in a book. This game is a lot more just sort of like walking through an experience. There's not really any challenge to it, I'd say, but the results are quite good. I think it justifies the fact that it's an interactive experience quite well. Basically, you play as this girl who returns to her family home, and as she explores the house again, you get to relive the events that occurred when each of her family members died. That sounds kind of weird. But I don't really want to say anything else. There's a lot more to say than just that, but since this is just kind of purely a narrative experience, I don't really want to say anything more. I'll just say it's a very tragic game. You know, even I was like feeling a bit sad after I beat it, so it probably did its job then in that regards. Even though there's no like challenge to it, I think the game uses its status as a game quite effectively. when it comes to just telling a story. So you'll have, like, in the little sequences with each of the family members, you'll be doing something with the controller that equates quite well to what's happening on screen, and it sort of, I wouldn't say it immerses you, but it puts you in the character you're controlling's mindset, I think, pretty well in pretty creative ways. I think one of the most famous examples that people know of in the game is when you're working at a really mundane job that one of the characters is working at, and it's making them depressed. So while with one analog stick you're doing their mundane job, with the other you're daydreaming, and it's a question of sort of, committing the day job analog stick to memory while exploring this daydream with the other stick. And I thought that was really cool. Some of the other dreams are a little less creative. You might just be walking around in first person with a different art style, or as a different character, but the fact is the game didn't outstay its welcome. It's only 2 hours long, so even if you're just going into this purely as a story to experience, and you're not that bothered about the interactive elements, I'd say it's still written well, gets across what it's trying to say pretty well. It's just it's just a sad little story to enjoy. I'd recommend it if you've got a couple hours free. I wouldn't put it on the same pedestal I put Obra Dinn, which both has a compelling narrative, but also has really cool and innovative gameplay, I think. But definitely worth a couple hours, I'd say, if you have, especially if you have PSN Plus. You don't even have to pay for it this month. Oh yeah, I was going to mention, but I forgot that that if you want some content exploring what remains of Edith Finch, since I'm not likely to make any, then you should definitely check out Joseph Anderson's video on it once you've beaten the game. I can't imagine I'd have much more to say than what he says about it, so little shout out there. So with those out of the way, back to the real games, boys. Back to the men's games. Yeah, I've been playing a bit of Sekiro, as you'd expect from me. I haven't played much of it, as you can tell from this footage. I'm quite early in. This footage that you're seeing now is actually after I went into some other level that took place in the past, and I got owned by a guy with a spear so hard I had to come back to the present, so this footage might make it look like I haven't played as much as I have. But yeah, Sekiro is the latest offering from Software, who are known for the Souls series, who are known for Bloodborne, and before that, believe it or not, a bunch of other games like Armored Core. Sekiro is a action, semi-open world sort of thing where you play as a shinobi swordman in 16th century Japan. And you've got to rescue your master from some bad dudes, while also fighting some mythological beasts as well. A bit of fantasy, a bit of politics, From what I've played, I have been, quite enjoying it. It's definitely the most divergent game From have made from the Souls formula in a while. It's a lot more focused on action than stat building. The combat feels pretty nice. It's based around timing and parries, so it's all about hitting the buttons at the right time so far, rather than grinding out a level or whatever. I definitely feel that combat-wise and environmental traversal-wise, it's a lot better than the Souls games. It remains to be said if it's as creative in every regard, like boss fights and world, to be as good as those games. But I know, it's a weird one because it's not a Souls game, but it still feels like From are clinging to the framework of those games. Like, Demon's Souls came out 10 years ago, Dark Souls came out 8 or so years ago, and it's just weird to see them make a game in a totally different setting where they're clearly trying to distance themselves a little bit from the gameplay of the Souls series, which was the series that catapulted them into real mainstream success. But still, they're still sort of clinging to a lot of elements from Souls, even if it's just the way the HUD is laid out, or how the checkpoints are laid out, or how the healing system is laid out. It feels like kind of a shame, really. I think it would have been nice if they had just broken completely from the formulas that defined the Souls games and Bloodborne to an extent, and really gone for something completely different. I guess it's not like a big issue, but it feels kind of like playing it safe a little bit, which is ironic since it seemed like Demon's Souls and Dark Souls were all about not playing it safe in terms of design, and now they're sort of clinging to the framework of what made them popular. And I don't know about that. As I said, I'm not that far into it, and I'm enjoying what I've been playing even the stealth is more enjoyable than I thought it was going to be, primarily because movement through the environment is so fast and fluid. It's really fun to jump up and grapple yourself into a tree, jump into some grass, and then sneak up on a soldier. So at least it's not like plodding and slow and keeps you waiting like a lot of games with tacked on stealth do. And I got to give credit where credit is due. This is a hard game that doesn't seem to have any sort of get out of jail microtransactions or anything like that. And this game's published by Activision, so you got to give them props for making a game that doesn't seem like it wants to nickel and dime or anything. So I gotta give them some praise there. But yeah, I am enjoying it so far. I don't know. I mean, I'm talking about a game that a lot of people have probably already beaten, and I'm sat here saying, well, maybe the combat is going to be good. We'll have to see how it goes. I only played a bit of it. I'm just wondering at what point will From just completely discard any element from the Souls games in one of their big mainstream titles. I don't know who at From is still keeping this stuff around. This isn't a very strong opinion of mine because, a lot of companies, they make action games, and even if the game in question is, in a different franchise or a different series, they keep certain elements and mechanics from other games they've worked on. So it's not like surprising. It's just like, I don't know. I was hoping that this late guy with a sword running around to checkpoints that when touched revive all the enemies when used and give you a bunch of health potions. I was wondering when might diverge from that formula that they've been working with for nearly a decade now. For their big AAA adventures, at least. The formula is getting a bit telltale-y. Even if I do enjoy the combat so far in Sekiro, I think more than I've enjoyed the combat in any of their games yet. So probably won't be doing a video on it anytime soon because it's going to take me a while to beat it, and even when I beat it, that doesn't mean I immediately want to jump into a critique, But maybe one day, once I've played through it a bunch, and really have a strong opinion, I'll talk about it again. But we'll see. Maybe I'll update you on how far I am in a future one of these. So yeah, before we go, I just want to thank everyone who's been backing, especially this year. There's been a lot more gaps in content because I've been making much longer videos that take a lot longer to make. I sort of want to make a few smaller videos for a bit. That's what I'm doing right now. Just sort of more fun videos on different topics, and I'm exploring outside of my comfort zone a little bit more. Days Gone was sort of a bit of a meme video. Obviously, that isn't the kind of game I'm going to be branching out to. But I thought it was fun to play up the idea that I'm trying to play different things, but I'm still playing them like I'd play an action game. And don't expect me to get out of my comfort zone and then deliver some epic takedown of something in a genre I'm not too familiar with, because I don't want to jump the gun on stuff that I'm not totally versed on. Baby steps, basically, baby steps. Got one series in particular that I've wanted to play for a while, and I'm thinking of making a series on it where I'm not like super critical of it, I'm just sort of going through and explaining my thoughts. To do that, I'm going to need to, I thought about emulating, but I think I want to record it off the original PlayStation. That's when the first game in the series came out. And I think I'm going to want to get a US copy, so I'm going to have to get a US PlayStation and a US copy of the game. There aren't that many up on eBay. If you guys know any good places to get American consoles, please let me know, because I'm looking for a PS2 and a PS1. I guess if I got a PS2, I could just backwards compatibility that stuff. But, it'd also be nice to just have a US PS1, sort of like, play my games on it. Play games that aren't subjected to the 50 hertz that they are in the UK, but also I can understand by not being from Japan. So, yeah. Thanks again, everybody. Catch you later. Peace out.